How's everybody? Good? Good.
How's everybody?
Well, I'm going to finish up my C3 series. I had just three little quick things I wanted to talk about that all just started with C, so that's it's nothing real creative or anything, but it's nothing real creative or anything, but it's a lot hotter up here than it is down there, so a little dehydrated. I started out a couple weeks ago. We were talking about character and how important character is, and really what a void of character there is in our culture today. And we talked about how it looks to be a person of character, and so hopefully you got that and thought it was pretty enlightening. Last week we talked about courage. Did anybody act courageous this week? Did anybody act courageous this week? Yeah, boy. All right. It's going to be a long day. If you don't talk back, then I feel compelled to talk more. And then we get in trouble. Today was the third C I wanted to talk about, and today I want to talk to you about compassion. Now, if you know me and know me well, this is one of my strengths. That sounds kind of funny, but the truth is, compassion may not be exactly what you think it is. It may not be exactly what you think. That's not a good way to say that. It may not look the way you think it should look. That may make more sense as we get going. Compassion comes from a Latin word that means to suffer with. Does that make sense? Like, when we have compassion, that means I see the suffering around me and I engage that suffering around me. Okay? So, everybody with me? All right. Everybody with me? All right. The scientists that study emotions, though, they've defined compassion as this. It is a feeling that arises when confronted with another's suffering, and a feeling, and that feeling motivates us to relieve that suffering. That's more, to me, that's more accurate. What compassion is not just, oh, that's sad, and going on about your business. It is actually sharing in that suffering that's going on around us, and that suffering that's going on around us emotionally moves us to action. Now, that can look a lot of different ways, right? Like, I've been kind of keeping up with the political things that are going on right now, and it seems to be like in our culture there's a whole lot of name calling. Everyone else is criticizing each other for not being compassionate because of whatever laws they back or whatever political stances they back. So it's kind of come down to like this idea, and you understand it, like a Democratic Party is the party of compassion, and the Republican Party is the party for the rich, and it's non-compassionate. But when we start to look at it, is that really true? Or is it just a lot of name calling? Because I don't see a lot getting done either way. I don't see a lot of movement either way. I don't see a lot of being compelled to take action either way. And it's real easy in a political world like we live in today, in a world with the resources we have today, to put our compassion onto others, right? Like, I see something that is heart-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, right? And first thing I say is, somebody ought to somebody ought to. Why don't they do? Why? Our question is always toward somebody else because we don't feel personal responsibility to stop the suffering around us. We think, oh, well, that's why we need to elect this politician over that politician. Oh, that's why I send my $20 a month to Compassion International. They take care of that. So we are like, oh, this is how compassion works. But I think that we are missing it. And I think because we're missing compassion, because compassion, real, true compassion, is absolutely going away in our society today, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble. A society without compassion is a society that collapses on itself. Is a society that collapses on itself. Is going to end in destruction. Because compassion is what moves us away from ourselves to the idea of others. And we just don't live that way. Our world's not structured that way. And we just don't live that way. Our world's not structured that way. Our world today is a very self-consumed place, wouldn't you say? Most everything we do is really about us. Even when we get into the elections and the election process, the truth is, I really care the most about what affects me. I really care the most about what affects me. I really don't care about what's going on with other people or oh yeah, that's bad suffering. Somebody should do something about that issue. But I really want to know how it affects me. But I have a question for you. Would you vote for someone whose policy would adversely affect you if it was going to truly help others? I seriously doubt it. I don't think many people would, because we're very self-consumed. We want, and we put together and we strive for and we plan for, we look for the best life that we can possibly have. But we're not very compassionate. Now we look around and we see things that are sad and we say, wow, that's sad. But if it doesn't compel us to action, then it is not truly compassion. Compassion is a compound that includes passion, and passion is love, and love is denying myself to help and care for the well-being of those around me. And that's the root, that's the basis, that's the foundation of what compassion is. All through the New Testament, you see stories of Jesus and his compassion. In Matthew chapter 9, you see Jesus coming through and he's healing. And he's healing, it says he healed them of all diseases. And Jesus, it says, he looked at them with compassion. And it says they were like a sheep without a shepherd. And he said this, he said that the workers were few. There wasn't enough people that cared about these people who, the Bible says, were oppressed and helpless. They were beaten down. They were overtaxed. They were overworked. They had no hope. They were hopeless and helpless. And it broke Jesus' heart and it moved him to healing. And he healed the multitudes. And he helped heal the thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But his heart was broken as he talked to his followers and said, crops are so plentiful, but where do we get the workers? Where do people start to feel this compassion to a point where I look at it and don't go, oh, that's sad, but I look at it and say, what can I do to ease the suffering around me? In Matthew chapter 14, Jesus, it says that Jesus was out teaching, and he had been teaching for 3 days. And there were thousands and thousands of people, like over 5,000 men, not counting women and children. And they had been with him in the wilderness. Now, the wilderness is not like being in Canton, where we just have a few choices in restaurants and things like that. This is not the wilderness. The wilderness was like where there was no food and limited water supply. And so they had been out there 3 days, and it said Jesus had compassion on the crowd. And what did that compassion do? It wasn't, man, I feel sorry for these people. While he's back in his tent with the AC blowing and his chicken leg and his tent with the AC blowing. It wasn't like, oh man, it's supposed to be hot out there for them. It wasn't like, oh man, it's supposed to be hot out there. Jesus looked at his followers and he said, feed them. Jesus looked at his followers. Feed these people. Don't tell them, man, I'm sorry about your bad luck. You might ought to go home and get something. You might ought to go take care of this yourself. He says, you feed them. You feed them. His compassion was a hurt. It was an empathy. It was a connection with the suffering of these people that moved into an action. And that action was what? It was the feeding of the 5,000, right? Miraculous. The feeding of the 5,000, right? Miraculous. Mark chapter 9. Story of a widow woman whose only son died. And she comes to Jesus, and she's just broken. I mean, she's already lost her husband. Now she loses her only son. The Bible says that he was moved to compassion, and he went to her son, and he raised him from the dead. And he raised him from the dead. See, it wasn't like, man, I'm sorry about your bad luck. Or, wow, it wasn't like, man, I'm sorry about your bad luck. That hurts. Man, I hurt for you. That hurts. But it was, I hurt for you, and I can do something about it. I hurt for you, and he stepped out into action, and he went, performs another miracle, and raises his slain son. Performs another miracle. In Luke chapter 7, no, that was in Luke chapter 7, I'm sorry. In Luke chapter 7. In Mark chapter 9, there was a man who had brought his son to Jesus, and the son had been filled with spirits that had been tossing him into the fire. He would go into seizures and be tossed into fires, and the spirit that this kid had was trying to kill him. The Bible says that the man came to Jesus and asked him to heal his son, to cast out this demon from his son. And Jesus said, anything. He asked him if you can, and Jesus looked at him like, what do you mean if I can? He asked him if you can, and Jesus looked at him like, if I can? If you believe, anything is possible. And the guy says this craziest statement in the Bible. I believe, Lord, help my belief. I believe. Like, which way is it? Like, I believe, Lord, help my belief. How many of us are there, though? Like, I believe. Like, man, I really need help because I don't know if I believe that much. Because I don't know if I believe. The Bible says that Jesus had compassion on the man, and he went to him and he cast out demons. Jesus fed 5,000. He raised the dead. He healed the sick. He cast out the demons all because of a move of compassion. Because he didn't just look at the suffering and go, man, isn't that bad? Somebody ought to do something about that. He actually takes on his call, his purpose in the world. Jesus believed that his purpose in the world was to relieve the suffering of the world, to restore all of creation back to what God had intended creation to be and to look like. One God among his people. I will be your God and you will be my people. And Messiah comes and he makes that possible. But it's only possible through compassion for the suffering of people who can't help themselves. Of people who can't help themselves. So I have to ask you, what's going on around us today? What's going on? I mean, honestly, what is happening around us today that hurts our hearts? Happening around us today that hurts our hearts? What is it that we look at and go, man, that's bad? That hurts our hearts. What is it that we look at and go, man, somebody ought to do something? What is it that we look at about that? Somebody ought to do something. What is it that we look at? Somebody should stop that. Somebody should stop that. Somebody should all the time, though. Looking at ourselves and not ever seeing that we have anything to give. That we have anything. But see, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. But see, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. In Matthew chapter 25, man, if you got your Bible or your phone or whatever, just turn to Matthew 25 for a second. Now, Matthew 25 and toward the end of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus goes into these parables, one after another. Like one is the parable of the Good Samaritan, which we talked about a couple months back. We see all these parables that Jesus talks about. And in these parables, he's painting these ideas of what the kingdom of heaven actually looks like. And what I see here is that we cannot get it straight in our minds what is heaven and what is the kingdom of heaven. Because everybody wants to go to heaven, right? Because what is in heaven? Heaven is defined in our culture in America as the ultimate satisfaction of the flesh. I want to go to heaven because I won't suffer anymore, because I'll have everything I ever wanted, because I won't have to deal with any more pain, because I'll have all the money I ever needed, because I won't have to work for that money. We have this idea of streets of gold and pearly gates and mansions in glory, and that's what my heaven looks like. And tell me what I have to do to get there. And tell me what I have to do. And Jesus totally crushes that, but nobody seems to see it. Totally crushes that, but nobody. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven looks like this. And he starts telling all of these stories. He says, if you want to enter in the kingdom of heaven, this is what it looks like. You have to take up your cross and you have to follow me. You have to do what I do. You have to have compassion. And in every story, go back and look at them. Read the Gospels. You're going to see that when Jesus tells these stories, the root of every story in the New Testament is compassion that moves people to action. That moves people to action. And we wonder why we're not experiencing the kingdom of heaven. And when Jesus said himself, the kingdom of heaven is upon you, it's among you, it's within you, it's all around you. What are you waiting on? Why won't you enter in? What are you waiting on? Why won't you enter in? What are you waiting on? In Matthew 25, he had been going through all of these. When he comes to the end of Matthew 25, he starts talking about the judgment of God. Now, what is the judgment of God? In John chapter 3, Jesus says the judgment of God is this. In John chapter 3, Jesus says the judgment of God is this. In John chapter 3, Jesus made it real simple. The judgment of God is simply this. It is light. The judgment of God is simply this. The light came into the world, but people like the darkness more than the light. You have been judged already for not coming into the light. So when we look at the light, we look at Jesus as the light of this world, the light that is the representative of God and the reflection of the light of God. So light is the presence or fire of God. So when God is in our presence and the light is in our presence, we are then judged. Okay? Anybody ever experienced that? Okay? Yeah, I don't like to do the things that you're supposed to do in the dark. I don't like to in the presence of God. And you probably don't either because it's extremely uncomfortable. Right? And it's extremely evident. Like I don't need anybody telling me what that sin is or what sin is. I don't have to go and ask a preacher, is this a sin? I don't have to go because because in the light of God's glory and the presence of God in my life, even if he's uninvited, in my life, like he's intrusive sometimes, correct? He decides when he's going to be manifest, made known in my life. It's usually when I'm in the middle of something I shouldn't be. It's usually when I'm in the middle of something. Then we stand that judgment. And Jesus goes in Matthew 25 and he says this, that judgment is going to look something like this. There's going to be sheep and there's going to be goats. And he says there's going to be those who think they're right and there's going to be those who just live. And as he goes through in Matthew 25, he says to these people, he said, well, you have to leave my presence. And leaving the presence of God, leaving the presence of God is death. Leaving the presence of God is death. Because life only exists in the light. Life only exists in the presence of God. And so he says, you have to leave my presence because of this fact. Now this is a story Jesus is telling. Now this is a story Jesus is telling. He said, because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. And when I was thirsty, you didn't give me anything to drink. And when I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And when I was in prison, you didn't come and see me. And these people over here who were religious and had done all the right things and thought they were good enough to go to heaven, to have the 7 virgins and the total satisfaction of my flesh or whatever. The ones who had memorized the Bible verses, the ones who tried to not do the list of the wrong things, the ones who said a prayer. And they're like, but didn't we say a prayer? And they're like, but then he says, like, you're going to have to leave my presence. And he says, like, you're going to have to, because this isn't about saying a prayer. I want to know, where were you when I was suffering? I want to know, where were you when I was suffering? And these other people were like, where were you when I was suffering? And these other invited in, and he said, and what did we do to deserve to enter into the kingdom? Oh, because when I was hungry, you fed me. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited and comforted me. When I was in prison, you visited and comforted me. And so when Jesus lays it all out and he brings it to one point, it comes down to the one point. Did you live with compassion? Did you live with compassion? Did you see suffering around you and did you choose to do anything about it? And did you choose to do anything about it? Well, that seems harder than saying a prayer. Let's go back. I like to say a prayer and go to heaven and get satisfaction of the flesh. Let's go back. I like to say a prayer and go to heaven and get satisfaction. All right. Well, this probably in the church for you. All right. Well, this probably in the church, because that's not what Jesus says is the way to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Jesus said the gate to life is narrow and few ever find it. Why? Is narrow and few ever find it. Because it requires laying down myself. Because it requires laying down to stop the suffering of that around me. To stop the suffering. That's why people don't enter into life. That's why there's no satisfaction in our world today. Because we are self-absorbed and self-consumed. And if I am self-consumed, I do not live with compassion. I may live with sympathy. Man, I may live with sympathy. That's terrible. I may live with sympathy. Man, those people in Africa are starving. That's terrible. Man, those people in Africa are starving. Somebody should do something about that. Those kids don't have shoes to wear to school. That's terrible. Somebody should do something. They should pass some law that gives them. They should pass some law that gives them. They should pass some law. And they should do it, but not raise my taxes to do it. But not raise my taxes to do it.
but not raise my taxes today.
Somebody should do something about this suffering in our world.
Somebody should do something.
Why are there so
about
many
this
people
suffering
living
our
in
world?
poverty?
Somebody
Why
should do-
is it
Why
that
are there
people
so
will
many
have
people
less
living
now
in
than they've
poverty?
had before?
Why is it
Why
that
are there
people
so
will have
And
less
who should
now
do
than they've
something
had
about it?
before?
Somebody should stop this
And
suffering.
who should do something about it?
Somebody should stop this
And
suffering.
who should do something
And you watch
about
the
it? Somebody
political
should stop
stuff
this
on
suffering.
TV and you see
And you watch the
that
political stuff on TV.
there's these
and you
big
see- you watch
groups
the-
of people that are buying politicians to get them to act right on these issues, to vote right on these issues.
Act right on these issues.
And they're
to vote right
spending
on these issues.
billions
And they're
of
spending
dollars to get the right
billions
politicians elected to take care of
get
these
the right
issues.
Politicians elected.
But I have to
take
ask,
care of
would
these
it
issues.
billions of dollars go a
Elected. I
long
have to
ways
ask,
toward
would it
solving these
billions of
issues?
dollars go a long ways toward solving
When
these
did
issues?
Jesus ever call for his followers
When
to
did
call on
Jesus ever
politicians
call
to
for
take
his
care of the
followers
suffering
to
around
call on
us?
politicians to
That's
take
my
care of the
question.
suffering around us?
That's my question.
Suffering around us.
And if I have the ability to stop the suffering of anyone in my life,
to stop the suffering
and I don't do it,
anyone in my
then what does
life,
that make me?
and I don't do it,
then what does that make me?
and I don't do it, then what
So y'all thought this was going to be cool. Oh, compassion, that's so awesome. So y'all thought this was going to be cool. Where do we give? Where do we sign up? So y'all thought this was going to be cool. Where do we give? Where do we sign up? Here's what I found in my personal life.
Where do we sign up?
Here's what I
Passion
found in my
stinks.
personal
Where do we
life.
give? Where do we sign up?
Stinks.
Here's what I
Passion
found in my
stinks.
personal
Because people who don't have and people who are needy
Because people who don't
and people
have
who are
and people who
unlovable
are needy
are unloved.
people
People who are unloved
are unloved
are unloved generally
who are
because
unloved
they are
are
hard to
unloved
love.
generally
People who are
because
unloved,
they are
they're needy because they take and consume of everyone and everything around them.
take and consume of everyone and everything.
See, it paints a pretty picture to say, man, I just want to help the poor. It's going to
See,
be
it
awesome.
paints
We're
a
gonna do
pretty
our
picture to
mission.
say, man, I just want to help
It's easy to
the
do
poor.
that.
See,
Do
it
your
paints a
mission
pretty
and go
picture to
home.
say, man, I just want to help. It's easy to do
But
that.
man,
Do
when
your
it gets
mission and go
personal,
home.
it gets tough. I'll testify to
Man,
that.
when it gets personal,
It gets tough.
I'll
The
testify to
unloved
that.
people are unloved
gets
because
tough.
they're
The
unlovable.
unloved people are unloved
gets
because
tough.
they're unlovable.
It costs you something every time you're around them. It takes away from you. It takes away from you. That's the question. How comfortable can you be having others take advantage of you? Others take advantage. Everybody has a favorite Bible verse, right? I have a least favorite
Bible verse, right?
Like everybody's like, oh yeah, that's my favorite verse. Like everybody, I have this verse that I hate. Despise it. I like to skip over it. I highlight it with a black marker. Despise it. I like to skip over it. I highlight it with a black marker. But it got in me. And when it got in me, I couldn't get it out, and I can't get it out.
And when it
There's
got
Apostle
in me,
Paul, and he asked the question this.
And when it
There's
got
Apostle
in me,
Paul, and he asked the
How
question,
can't
let
you
yourselves be wrong.
There's Apostle Paul, and he asked the question,
let yourselves
be wrong.
That's not fair. It's not right.
That's not
Why can't you just let yourselves be wronged? Why can't you just let yourselves be taken advantage of?
Why can't you just let yourselves?
Because if I give, or if I meet a need, if I meet suffering,
if I meet a need, if I meet suffering,
and I expect anything in return,
and I
it
expect
is not passion
anything in
or
return,
compassion,
and I
it is
expect
not passion,
anything
it
or
is
compassion,
slavery.
and I expect
I'm buying you.
It is slavery.
I'm buying you.
It is slavery.
What do the politicians want? There's a lot of you guys here who are in that place of hurt and
There's a lot of you
suffering.
guys here
They're trying to buy you. They're trying to own you. And the
trying to
government
buy
has
you.
got
They're
in the
trying to
business
own
of owning
And the
the
government
poor
has
and the
got in the
helpless.
business of
What do you mean? They don't own me? Yeah, they do. They own you. They control
What do you
you.
mean? They don't
They
own me?
own
Yeah,
you
they do.
because
They
they
own you.
bought
They
your
control
vote.
you. Mean they don't
They
own me?
own
Yeah,
you
they do.
because
They
they
own
bought.
you.
And now
They
they'll
own
tell you what you can do and how much you can have.
now
and where you
they'll
can live.
tell
That's
you
not the
what
way
you
it was
can
meant
do
to
and
be.
how much you
That's
can
not
have.
compassion. That's
That's
politics.
not the way it was meant to be.
That's not compassion. The kingdom of heaven isn't political.
The kingdom of heaven.
The kingdom of heaven
political.
says, I see a need and I must do whatever is in my power to meet it. I am moved by the suffering, by the connection to the suffering around me. I told you when I started that a lot of people who know me would laugh if I said I'm one of the most compassionate people you'll ever meet. And here's why. Because compassion doesn't look always. And here's why. Like compassion doesn't look always. See, one thing I have is I have an ability to be uncensored at times. I have an ability to be uncensored at times. And so because my heart breaks for people, I'm not afraid to tell you exactly. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth, how you're killing yourself. What drugs are doing to your life, how you're destroying your marriage, how you're messing your kids up. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth because it's not a popular thing to say. And when you say no to someone, you say, well, that's not compassion. When actually saying no would be the compassionate thing, and saying yes is the easy thing to do. Sometimes saying yes to someone just gets rid of them. And sometimes it's the person who you don't need to get rid of that you need to say no to. You can say no to this thing because there's another way that you can be helped. But here's the deal. It's going to cost me. It's going to cost me time. It's going to cost me energy. It's going to cause me pain and suffering because I'm going to walk with you through this. Because I'm going to walk with you. Man, I'd rather just give you $20 and send you on your way. Man, I'd rather just give you $20 and send you on your way. It's a lot easier, isn't it? It's a lot easier to just give here. Just what you need. It's a lot easier. Let me pay it and go. Here, just what you need. It's a lot easier. No, but instead, I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to love you when you're the most unlovable. I'm going to walk with you and help you through this circumstance, through this situation. The poor are becoming poorer because we're giving them enough to get by on when nobody wants to go in and find the root cause. Nobody wants to get personal. Nobody wants to get real. We want to elect somebody in some other place to take care of what we should be taking care of on our own streets. It's not the government's job to ease the suffering in our communities. It's our job. There are 50 churches that you could throw a rock and hit. There should not be suffering in this community. There should not be suffering in this community. The problem is we want to say a prayer and go to heaven. The problem is we want to say a prayer and go to heaven. The problem is so what happens in our world? Suffering continues. So what happens in our world? Let the suffering continue because I don't have time. I don't have the energy to make the changes that need to be made. Didn't we elect somebody to take care of that for us? Didn't we elect somebody to take care of that for us? To which Jesus would say, you're going to have to depart from me. To which I don't know you. Jesus would say, you're going to have to depart from me. Because I don't know you. I just don't know you. I just don't know you. I just don't know you. Have Jesus say, I don't know you. Have Jesus you call yourself my follower, but you don't care about anybody around you but yourself. I don't even know who you are. I don't even know who you are. I don't even know who you are. But it doesn't have to be that way. So you don't have to get all religious and holy and know a bunch of Bible verses. You have to look at someone and go, man, that hurts my heart. And I can do something about that. To which Jesus says, enter into my kingdom. To which Jesus says, now you know what real life is.
Now you know what real
It's
life
exactly
is.
the opposite of what
Now
we
you
think.
know what
We're
it's
all
exactly
pursuing
the
this
opposite
life
of
that's
what we
beyond
think.
imagining.
We're all
Exactly
pursuing
the
this
opposite.
life
And we're
that's
doing
beyond
it by
imagining.
neglecting
We're all pursuing this
and
life.
walking
We're
over
doing
and
it
walking
by
past those who
neglecting
need us
and
to take
walking
action the
over and
most.
walking
And we
past
we
those who
we
need
we
us to
reason
take
with
action
ourselves
the
and go,
most. And
but I'm on a mission for God.
reason with ourselves
I
and
don't
go,
have
but
time
I'm on
for
a
all of
mission
this.
for God. With ourselves
I
and
don't
go,
have
but
time
I'm on
for
a
all of
mission
this.
for God. With ourselves
I
and
don't
go,
have God has
time
called
for all
me
of
to
this.
whatever, and I
God
don't
has
have
called
time
me
for all
to
this riffraff.
whatever,
And I
God
don't
has
have
called
time
me
for all
to
this riffraff.
whatever, and
And
I don't
someday
have time
we're going to
for all
realize
this
that we
riffraff.
work our whole lives for God
Someday
and
we're
never
gonna
find
realize
His
that we
presence.
work our whole lives for
Because
God
His
and never
presence
find His
is
presence.
always in the riffraff.
Because His presence is
Always in the riffraff. You want to know where God is?
always in the riffraff.
He's
You
with
want
the
to know
poor,
where God is?
the hurting,
He's
the
with the
suffering, the broken, the addicted, the abandoned, the abused.
suffering, the broken, the
That's where
addicted,
God's
the abandoned,
presence
the
is.
abused. Suffering, the broken.
God's
That's where
presence
God's
isn't
presence
with
is.
the elite and those who rise
God's
above and
presence
those who
isn't
don't
with
need
the
anything.
elite and those who rise
God's
above and
presence
those who
isn't
don't
with
need
the
anything.
elite
and those who rise above and
God
those who don't
consumes
need anything.
the needy in our
God
world.
consumes.
And if we ever have
the
to ask
needy in our
ourselves, where has God gone?
And if we ever
Maybe
have to
we're
ask
just in the
ourselves,
wrong
where has
neighborhood.
God gone? And if we ever have
Maybe
to
we're
ask
just in the
ourselves,
wrong
where has
neighborhood.
God
Maybe we're
gone?
just
If we ever have
hanging
to
out
ask
with the wrong
ourselves,
people.
maybe we're just hanging out.
Maybe we
with the
just
wrong
hadn't got
people.
dirty in a while.
Hanging out.
Maybe we
Maybe
just
we
hadn't got a little
dirty in a
fancy.
while. Hanging out. Maybe we just
Maybe we
hadn't
just got a little
dirty in a
fancy.
while.
We can live different. We just have to choose to live different.
Can live different. We just have
Entering
to
the kingdom of heaven
can live different.
is
Entering the
a
kingdom
choice.
of heaven.
It's not forced.
Entering the
We're not
kingdom of
forced to take
not
the
forced.
broad path.
We're not forced.
We're not
to take
forced
the
to go
broad
through the
path.
narrow
We're not
gate.
forced.
We
We're not
don't have
forced
to
go
have a
through
lot
the
of
narrow
prerequisites. Jesus took
We don't have
the
to
failures
have a
of
lot
his
of
culture and the
prerequisites.
outcast of
Jesus
his
took the
society, and he
failures
said,
of
"I
his
think you're the
culture and
people
the
who can
outcast
change
of
the
his
world. You
society."
come and you
And he
follow
said, "I
me."
think you're the people who can change the world. You come and you follow
me.
I think you're the people who can change the world. You
It's a
come and you
choice.
follow me.
It's a choice. It always has been a choice. And it will forever be a
It always
choice.
has been a choice.
Whether you live in the
And it
kingdom
will
of heaven or
forever
not
be a
is
choice.
up to you.
Whether you live in the kingdom of heaven or not,
I just
is
want
up
to be where
you.
God
Whether you
is.
live in the kingdom of heaven
So
or
if it
not,
takes
I just
getting
want
dirty to be where God is, that's cool with me.
So if it takes getting dirty,
If it takes being around to and talking to and ministering to and walking with and sharing life with the addicted and the abused and the abandoned and the outcast, bring it to me. That is why this place exists. Do you understand that?
That is why this place
We didn't start this because the county needed another church with a big steeple so fancy people could get dressed up and go in and talk about how great God is, or how great God was and how great God will be,
or how great God was.
I've had all of that. I know how great God was. I know how great God will be, but I want to know, where is God today?
I want to know, where is God today?
And so we started this church because there are people that are hurting, and there are people that are broken, and there are people that need a community of people that won't reject them because they smell, because they have holes in their clothes, because their husband is a drunk, is an alcoholic, because they come from an abusive background, because of life has crushed everything about you. That's why we started this, because we need a place like that.
Because we need a place like that. Because we need a place like that.
We also need a place where I understand your addictions,
We
where I
also need a
understand your
place
suffering, but
where
I
I
will
understand
never tell
your
you it's
addiction.
okay.
We
I
also need a
understand your
place
suffering,
where
but I
I
will never
understand
tell
your
you it's
addiction.
okay. I'll never tell you it's good. I'll never tell you that it's living. I'll tell you that God has something better for you, and you don't have to live that way anymore.
Better for you, and you don't have
You
to live
need
that
to
way
know the
anymore.
truth.
Better for you, and you don't have
You
to live
need
that
to
way
need
anymore.
to be told the truth by someone who cares, by someone who's walking who cares, by someone who's walking who cares. We get up every week, and we do this every week again and again and again. And I have to be honest with you, it gets frustrating.
And again and again, and I have to be honest
Because
with you, it's frustrating. And again,
when you're working with the broken, when you're working with The broken. There's a whole lot of letdowns and there's rare victories. The broken. There's a whole lot of letdowns and there's rare victories. I mean, just to be truthful, man, it's far and few in between that we see. It's far and few actually that we see. Get a new life and walk it out. Get a new life and walk it out. But when they do, it's unbelievable. But when they do, it's unbelievable. It's worth it all. But when they do, it's unbelievable. It's worth it all. Some days, it's worth it all. Some days it's tough, man. Some days you want to quit. I understand. Some days it's tough, man. I understand when you've invested in that friend that is just going the wrong way. I know what it's like to have to quit and give up. I know what it's like to have to quit and give up. I just thank God that nobody gave up on me. I just thank God that nobody gave up on me. And I think I can spend the rest of my life not giving up. And I think I can spend the rest of my life not giving up. And I think I can spend the rest of my life not giving up. God's grace. I've experienced the difference between being dead and life. I know what's different between being dead and life. And I really believe that this. And I really believe it's not a religious organization. Thank God. It's not a religious organization. You know, it's hard, but in our culture today, I don't even like calling this a church because it's just a negative thing. Because it's just a negative thing. This is real life. This is what the kingdom of heaven is supposed to be about. This is what the kingdom of heaven is supposed to be about. Where you look to the person to your left and to your right and go, man, they're suffering, they're hurting, they're in need of this, and I can stop that. They're in need of this, and I can stop that. I can help with that. I've been through that, and I know how it feels. And I can do something about it. I know how it feels, and I can do something about it. I know how it feels. You just got to choose. You just got to choose. Are you in? I mean, are you in? Are you ready to get dirty, or are you just ready to move on to do something else and just come and just take up a seat and whatever, put on your nice clothes and whatever? I mean, just hear a good thing and, oh, that was great. I don't care if it was great, eloquent, sounded good, whatever. I don't care if it was great. What it needs to be is it needs to be dirty. What it needs to be is it needs to be dirty. What it needs to be is it needs to be dirty. Man, I loved it when Jesus got down in that temple and wrote in the dirt. I loved it when Jesus got down in that temple and wrote in the dirt. He got down on his knees and he wrote in the dirt. He got down on his knees and he got down on his knees and he washed the feet of his followers. He got down on his knees. He showed us how to live with compassion. Now it's our turn to just follow. We've already got the example. We already see the suffering around us. If you don't have suffering around you, you're just not looking. If you don't have suffering around you, your eyes are closed and your heart is hard and you're cold. Your eyes are closed and your heart is hard and you're cold. There is plenty around us to take care of. There is plenty around us. I think there's so much. I think it's the exact opposite problem. I think sometimes we just overwhelmed. I think it's the exact opposite problem. I think sometimes we get too overwhelmed. How can I help them all? That's when Jesus sat on the cliff and wept over Jerusalem. That's when Jesus sat on the cliff. It's just too much, too overwhelming. It's just too much, too overwhelming. The fields are plentiful, but the workers are few. Fields are overwhelming, but the workers are few. Fields overwhelming, but the workers are few. But we're called to one. But we're called to one. Just called to one. God's going to move in your heart. You're going to have the compassion. It's going to move you and prompt you to take action. That's the way it works. That's the way the kingdom of heaven works. That's the way it works. That's the way. You got to stand up with me. I want to pray for you now.